Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? Today is, oh wow, it's already Saturday. Saturday, August 26, 2023. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I am doing well. Thank you for inquiring. I felt the energy as soon as I said it. I have a wonderful conversation that I've crafted together for you guys today. Um, and I think I'm gonna place this video under the Quantum Conversations tab because this is 100% a quantum conversation, but it's also under the spiritual kung fu. That language really resonates with me right now because we're in a spiritual war, and because I am a spiritual warrior. You know what I mean? Um, and so I wanted to put this under the spiritual kung fu tab in terms of the video name, and then focus on the inner being. But this is 100% a quantum conversation. So this will be in the quantum conversations tab. The other thing is, I have written two papers on spiritual kung fu, part one, part two, and part three is the one that I'm working on now, life force energy, which is going to be including some of the context of what we're going to talk about today, and then the importance of again, prana, chi, life force energy, etc., and how those things are going to play a really critical role in terms of the consciousness of humanity moving forward. For, I would say, for the better part of a year and a half, people all around the world, and in America obviously specifically, wore face masks for continual, for some people from 9 to 5, other people longer stretches. I saw people in California doing hardcore, intense outside workouts wearing face masks. I was at the beach, people were outside wearing face masks. So this was a real serious expose for sure, as well as um, peek into the mind of where those people were at that time. And now fast forward to 2023, when all of these crazy, wild, never heard of before, diseases are popping up out of nowhere. And at the same time, people are losing their ability to think clearly, losing their ability to think for themselves, losing their ability to, individualize their own thought. Everything is groupthink now. So the implications of denying oxygen to the brain and to the bloodstream, into the entire ecosystem of the body, which is critical, not just for survival. Well, yes, for survival, 100%, but then to thrive. So that was all a part of the plan. And it's just so bizarre and savage at the same time that they ran a whole Black Lives Matter campaign. And the slogan the whole time was, I can't breathe. And Black people were outside marching, wearing face masks that said, I can't breathe. If that was not the most idiotic thing ever written in the history books, well, no. We've definitely topped that. But before I get into the subject, I'm very happy to be with you guys. Right now, I'm in a spirit, a great mood. I've been in a great pace with my work and the things that I've been focused on. Okay, so announcements real quick so I don't be forgetting to do my due diligence. Okay, so the first official meeting for our book club is going to be Saturday, September the 9th. I'm going to announce the time once I create the flyer. I need to cancel my Zoom account. I think I mentioned in the previous video that they have this whole new algorithm, condition in the terms of Hertz service that basically gives artificial intelligence full control over and autonomy over all of your content if you once you upgrade to the new system. And so, of course, I'm not going to be doing that. So I need to find an alternative, probably live stream. But I also have my website does have a setup where we can do conferences, video conferences within it. I just need to sit down and go through what that entails. So I will announce that soon, but our first official meeting is going to be September the 9th. Our first official book is going to be The Alchemist. And I want to start with The Alchemist because it's whimsical and because it taps the imagination and it taps the heart chakra and it's light. And I think we need some light energy and some whimsical energy in the ecosystem right now. And it's a very simple book to read and it's not very long. So I'm thinking that first meeting, September the 9th, if everybody could be to the halfway point of the book, that would be wonderful. I don't have my book right in front of me. I think it might be in my car, but I'll get it and then I will post an actual, message about it and say, read up to this point. And then when we have that first meeting, we can kind of build around that, talk about that first part of the book, and then also read some of the forthcoming chapters. But I'll make an announcement about that. But that's the date, September the 9th. I posted a video, Portals into the Manifested by Eckhart Tolle. And that conversation is a complement to some of what I'm going to read from The Power of Now. So it's in the Jewels tab of your library. I also posted Deadly Butterfly, Surviving MK Ultra, a very fascinating conversation. I highly recommend you guys watch that. But I'm going to play a clip of it today. It's going to be about a 10-minute clip. So what else? Okay, so the second book, back to the book club real quick. The second book that I would like to suggest, and I just actually purchased another copy because my actual book is in storage, but Hidden Messages in Water by Masaru Emoto. I know we've all seen the videos passed around. I've played plenty of clips from his work in the channel. But to actually sit down and read the book and to read it as a collective and to expand on that and put it into context in terms of where we are today, and tapping into our mysticism. I'm going to be repeating that today because that's the vibe that I'm on. That word mysticism came to me, and that's kind of the inspiration of the conversation today. But yeah, the Hidden Messages in Water by Masaru Emoto. So if you guys want to, I'm not going to announce the day for that particular meeting, but just know a heads up if you want to go ahead and get that book if you're going to be joining us. Ask me anything. Tomorrow is Saturday. If you have a question that you would like to get my perspective on, anything going on in the world, anything happening in your life, anything you need advice on, something personal, science, math, pop culture, whatever it is, hit me up, let me know. You can post it on the membership cipher, or you can email me info@ZaZaAli.com and I will post my responses tomorrow. And I posted a challenge for a fast this coming Wednesday. So I will be doing it's actually going to be a 48-hour fast because I eat one meal a day. I just figured that out recently that I've been doing 48 hours this whole time. But yeah, Wednesday, no food, only water and tea, fresh juices, fresh squeezed juices. I'm going to be doing a juice fast. If you don't fast or you haven't fasted before, I recommend doing just a raw food fast. All living foods, salads, fruits, smoothies, fresh squeezed juices, etc. No dairy. Actually, only raw. I don't even mean to say. I don't know if I said that. So that'll be this coming Wednesday. If you want to join us, click the challenge and accept the challenge. And then I also posted a Putting Love Out into the World challenge for this week as well. So let's, again, raising the vibration, again, being intentional with the love frequency. I love doing these. I love reading your experiences, and I will be posting mine. Excuse me. That will also run parallel with the fast. So add yourself to the challenge and then post your content and your information or your video or your photos so that we can all share in the wonderful experience. Okay, so that was that. I told you I uploaded the videos. I announced that tomorrow's Ask Me Anything. Okay, wonderful. So I want to start with this video. I'm going to play a clip of Dan Winter. This is from the Lazarus Initiative Symposium. This is one of you'll see I have a lot of his Sasha Stone's content sprinkled throughout the membership channel in your library. But this is a clip of Dan Winter discussing the blue flame. And I'm just going to move my screen over to this side. Okay, so this full video is in your library in the Hidden in Plain Sight tab. This is a fascinating conversation. I highly recommend listening to it, especially just to contextualize what's happening in terms of the mindset and the collective consciousness and what the fear vibration is doing to the collective consciousness. So Dave Winter is joining into a conversation that's already going on that's talking about survivors of MK Ultra, survivors of extreme sexual abuse at the hands of the government, the CIA, etc. And they're talking about how the ramifications of that level of torture and abuse on the collective consciousness, and how it's been happening and has allowed to an extent that now it is affecting it on a much deeper subconscious level. He doesn't say that. That's sort of my words, in including myself in the conversation they were already having. But so he gets into the metaphysics of the frequency vibrations of bliss and of heightened states of energy and consciousness, and how lower vibrational entities, they talk Dracos and ETs and things like that. I say lower vibrational entities. Lower vibrational entities feeding off of that energy and then being able to manifest in third dimensional reality in lieu of that portal, so to speak. So that ties back to the clips that I've shown of David Icke talking about the thinning of the veil. That's also relative to HAARP and the attack on the upper ionosphere, which in the paperwork says that their intention was to thin the upper atmosphere. To me, if that doesn't mean thinning the veil, I don't know what does. But it's the portal, is the going from the known to from the seen to from the unseen to the seen, playing itself out in an inverted way. Because this is what happens when you have a child. The child isn't even there. It's not a thought. It's not you know what I mean? You didn't sign up for it. You didn't put down a deposit and then have a date. It just was through, the obvious process of the man and the woman's union. That life form is created from nothing, meaning there's no evidence, there's no, there's nothing to reference in terms of it's here or it's coming or I want it to come. And then all of a sudden there's life. And then all of a sudden there's a person that you're holding in your hands. So I think from that vantage point, when I look at that and turn that inside out from the inverted process, from the inverted perspective, which is critical to me to not getting caught up in fear. If I understand how these people, these entities, these elements of consciousness work, that arms me with enough energy and fortitude to not be afraid. So I want to start out with this video. I'm going to play it. It's like 10 minutes. And again, he uses, his own kind of language. This guy is sciencey, so there's that. But I really just value what he says in terms of the blue flame element and the harnessing of energy, which is what's happening in mass right now in the collective consciousness.
Take it away. Well, I don't know if I can, but the idea was to get some sense of quote unquote big picture here, as in, well, if we're trying to find the original trauma, to sort the trauma, what is the collective trauma at the root of the gene pool for the misuse of sexual energy, as in the ET history of the gene pool, even the Draco history? The core concept here is that at the moment of sexual bliss or regular bliss, or even at a moment of max fear, at a moment of death, at all those moments, the DNA actually braids densely, implodes. You know how you see your whole life at the moment of death. And that compression effect in the genes, in the blood, and even in the glands produces a field, a blue fire field, the Tantra blue field. It's literally a longitudinal coherence. It is a manifestation of soul. We know, for example, the frequency signature that triggers that longitudinal coherence, as we trigger lucid dreams regularly with Therify.net, even the published literature on how you trigger lucid dreams, the frequency signature fits my equation, plantfire.com. Compression enables that implosion, and the body spits out the blue fire. And that blue fire is food for those who can't make the blue fire. This is fundamental. So now, the history, if you read, there's a book called the Thiuba Prophecies, Michel Demarquet, in which basically Thiuba being either Yehovah, Yahweh, who we now know as Enlil, or Thiuba as in Thuban, which is the home of the Draco. Either way, when we go back in history, we find that the Draco originally were androgynous. Remember, the Draco, this is Enlil's mother, is Draco, absolutely. And he invited the Draco in here, God of the Jews, Yahweh, as it were. And so they were androgynous. They pushed evolution by starting to replicate sexually. But what evolved clearly historically is literally a war of the sexes, in which it was illegal for the male and the female priestesses or shaman to have the same language. They had to have a separate language. And that actually is the language tree, why the shaman of the men and women tribes of Australia had a separate language, and also the caste system of India. It's all straight out of Draco. And when we did rituals to heal the war of the sexes of the shaman in Australia, rainstorms followed in what was a desert, because patriarchy induces deserts, that's proved. So the conflict was access to long-term memory was available only to those who, quote, had a soul who could make the blue fire. We know what that exact is. That is the physics of soul, which is you compress the DNA, you make longitudinal coherence, and that's what you ride in your aura when you lucid dream and when you die well. So this ability to create this aura of coherence is, let's say, the food for those who cannot make this kind of bliss. And they call this eating the louche. So when a child has fear, they produce a coherence field, which the Draco themselves could not make. In the history of the earth, they were called the Uru. And Yahweh was very, very parasitic. A classic example, Enlil, was when Anne Rice, in great detail, studied Enki Enlil. She called the father of all vampires, Enkil, literally, historically, the Grim Reaper. I mean, this is the guy that came in the movie Flatliners to eat you after death, because the Grim Reaper wanted to eat your soul, literally, and this is classic Draco. Now, I did many interviews with Johann Fritz, who was one of the few of the SSP experiencers who knew the Queen Draco personally, and the true story of the SSP experiencers of how they were using the Manchurian Candidate MK Ultra to split the personality. Great fear when young creates dissociation in memory, and that split allows them to create alters, which is literally multiple fragments of soul, which can then be used by the SSP experiencers, and they all tell the same story. They use trauma, often sexual trauma, to split the personality, dissociate memory, etc. So, long story, summary, this is all about the physics of getting a soul. So if you have access to some form of bliss process, your aura can make something which the Draco could not make. And yet all of the decisions of government right now are based on the fact that governments don't know what a soul is. This is the sin. The core sin, it actually is about, if you can teach your young people how to have a bliss process, to spit out that blue fire, then you have culture, because that's the definition of culture. And every ancient indigenous tribe knew the ability to communicate with those answers in that way is their name for God. So if you can get contact with that immortalizing stream of ultraviolet coherence, for example, actual tantra with a young person with good sexual energy can immortalize. That is real. And the blue fire cocoon of Tantra actually is a substance, what's called the Ba from the Ka, the Keshan body. And this, once we have the electrical engineering for these things, we can talk about the nature of soul and talk about the appropriate use of sexual energy, from abuse to bliss to kundalini to actually steering that aura tantrically to inhabit stars. So I think there could be a happily ever after.
So I want to say a couple of things because I want to play Ilana Freeland's a clip of what she says, but he said a couple of things I just want to contextualize because sometimes when we're listening to these people, things are said that may be out of context with our understanding because they have a different vantage point in the world. And when I say that, I just mean European or white people that don't have a native, Black, indigenous perspective. The vantage point is always different. 9.999% of the time. Sasha Stone, who is the guy who is in this video, whose membership channel this is I'm a part of, is the very, very rare exception, which is why I'm actually, pay attention. But wisdom is to be honored from many different sources and mindsets. And I agree with what he's saying. That's why I'm actually playing it. But I just want to give a little context because sometimes their vantage point is a little bit skewed on certain things. He mentioned that Yahweh was parasitic. Then he went on to talk about the Grand Reaper. I interpreted that as referencing all of the death and destruction that Yahweh or God allows, right? And so that was the way that I interpreted that. And then he said, Tantra with a young person can actually bring about the blue flame or something to that effect. It sounded creepy and weird when he said it, probably because he's an old white dude mainly, but he was talking in context of the way that these people and these entities, these lower vibrational beings, and the reason why this is such a prominent, prevalent aspect in our world. It really, really is. And this is going to be one of the real, sort of breaking force. But not breaking force. This is going to be one of the things that completely break the infrastructure of this reality in this world, is humanity having to come face to face with the level of evil and chaos that's happening in the backdrop of our world. And so the conversation that we're having is to elevate us into a fifth dimension of consciousness, if that's the appropriate word, or Christ consciousness, so that even if those things are happening in third dimensional reality, we're not going to be a part of that. That's why this is a quantum conversation. But what he said in terms of Tantra with a young person was not to, promote that, but to express that that's the reason why this whole world is happening in the backdrop and what the metaphysics of that energy harnessing is about. Okay. All right.
Very good. Ilana, comments.
I'm always overwhelmed when Dan Winter talks, because what happens in me is, I'm like 45 years into Rudolf Steiner, right? So I've got my Rudolf Steiner glossary lexicon here that I'm translating as fast as I can go when Dan starts talking. And some of the things definitely resonate. And a lot of it I put into the other category where to be looked at later. Luckily, I have a very good memory. So thank you, Dan. I'm not.
Simon might have called it etheric formative force, which was actually capacitive coupling, the blue fire.
Well, that's what I mean, is you're giving me new terms to see how it fits with the terms I know. No, that's true. And the thing I've been wanting to say, and it has to do with what Dan just said, and it also has to do with what Kathy has said about sexuality and Rima. When I think of sexuality, and you know, I'm not that interested in it now, but I was very interested in it. And I learned the term astral body. And that has really helped me to understand why sex is always involved in all the mind control, whether you're talking about reptilian or you're talking about the CIA, it doesn't really matter. But the sexual is brought up. And the sexual is part of the astral body function. The astral body is born approximately at adolescence. And the word adolescence comes from the Latin adolescere, which means to be on fire, which is certainly what adolescents are. And that you have you have the sexuality, and then you have the thinking, which is really interesting. The two correlate. So as the sexual organs come into fruition and are wanting to be recognized, so does ideation. And the ideation is very different from that of a child. It's definitely looking at ideas as living entities, you might say. The way I remember Einstein talked about it when he was thinking about his quantum thing, and he saw himself in a dream state, sitting at Princeton in his chair, as I remember, and suddenly he's riding a comet through space like a horse, like a bronco, and that understanding that the astral body is what the juice is coming from. Yes, it's coming from the etheric as well. The etheric is different. It's not the same as the astral. And so you have these spiritual bodies, that entities, definitely demonic entities would be the way I talk about them, is they love to eat human light. I mean, human light is like the creme de la creme. And so through sexuality, you're getting not just the sexual energy of the human body, that the developing human body and like a child, but you're getting also the ideation and the whole wonderful light bulb going on in your head as you think thing. And that's what I wanted to add to this, because that is something I can use as a conduit to the other things that Dan was saying.
Very good.
So that's Ilana Freeland. I love her. You guys know I quote her books, her work all the time. There's several videos of her in the Hidden in Plain Sight tab. I love her because she is a scientist and a researcher through and through, but she's also a woman, and she's an older woman, and she has a very intelligent, spiritual, and feminine perspective on these very difficult scientific topics, which is, it's something that I aspire to. So that's why I resonate with the way that she puts out her information. So I just want to recap what he was saying, talking about the blue flame, the lighting of the soul, so to speak, and these different progressions of consciousness from the lower nature to the higher nature, or from the lower self to the higher self, from the lower chakras to the higher chakras. There's this repeating theme of qualifying and quantifying ourselves in order to become God. That's all I keep hearing. All these different, that's what I hear. Blue flame. Oh, okay, another path to God. So we're talking about the lighting of the soul and how it can be used for adverse purposes, from a lack-based consciousness and a fear-based frequency, or from our higher nature, from a love-based frequency, and from being intentional about the lighting of the soul for the specifics of becoming God. That's an intention. When I said, okay, they're playing God, when I wrote that in my notes before the last headline news, I wrote that in my notes. They're playing God with a little g, which means that we have to become God with a big G. And it was like one of those aha moments. And so this whole process, what Ilana's talking about, what he was talking about, what the whole system of the chakras, the whole concept of alchemy, turning lead into gold, the whole process of these master teachers that we experience. Black people in America have experienced the master teacher of racism, white supremacy. I've experienced the master teacher of growing up in a family that was completely split by racism and drugs. And I fell somewhere in the middle and could be turned out to be completely different than all of it. That was a master teacher. Some of us have master teacher life experiences through trauma, through abuse, through neglect and abandonment. Some of us have it because we can't find our purpose. So, but all of these different, okay, so one thing he said a couple of things that I just wanted to highlight. He said, patriarchy induces deserts. My mind went to several places when he said that. Rex 84 for one in Africa, but that was like an intentional decimation of the area now known as the sub-Sahara. They intentionally went into Africa and basically created the conditions to create the desert in an area, a highly desertous area, in an area that was organically very green and lush. So my mind went there, but then also, on a spiritual level, the concept of patriarchy lacks emotional context, emotional well-being, emotional wellness. It's really like ingrained in the whole system from top to bottom, right? So why wouldn't that create deserts in consciousness where people have depression and anxiety and are suffering because they don't know who they are, because they aren't tapped into the fact that they are emotional beings, and that mastering their emotions is critical to this whole process we're talking about, working our way up the ladder to becoming God. He talked about the androgynous beings. He's coming from a different vantage point, but that same story has been told by many of our great teachers, in terms of initially there being an androgynous being that was which eventually evolved into what became man and woman through a whole different dynamic or process. But I wanted to highlight that because it might sound weird, but that's not his teaching. He's relaying the information from the ancient ones. That's why he keeps repeating that, because he studies them. That's why I like what he has to offer, right? Along with his perspective, of course. And he talked about that branching off into being the war of the sexes, which, oof, sorry, almost dropped my phone. Which this war of the sexes, which we've pretty much been in for a very long time. That should be clear at this point. And so the concept of the age of Aquarius, which we are creating in the quantum realm, we're creating that right now. The age of Aquarius is about coming back to the center, and that masculine and feminine being the true God self, the true Godhead, the true supreme being is the mastering of the masculine and feminine attributes of self. Your mental being has a masculine and feminine attribute. Your emotional being has a masculine and feminine attribute. Your spiritual being has a masculine and feminine attribute. And your physical being has a masculine and feminine attribute. This is a fact. And men will say, well, no, we don't. I don't have there's nothing physical, feminine about my body. Maybe not now. But when you were conceived, before the sperm, when the sperm and the egg in that initial connection, before that the formulation of gender takes place. And I'm going to simplify something that's not quite that simple, but that initial being before it evolves into the particular gender is actually considered female. That's not a That's a well-known thing, right? So yeah, there is. And then if you look at our bodies, going back to the androgynous beings concept, the men have breasts, right? Men have our the genitals are both in the same hip sort of area. They're different, but they're still in the same proximity, right? The body is sort of shaped and fashioned in a very similar way, just kind of remixed, right? So I'm only saying that to say that concept of men having a masculine and feminine attribute. Yes, this is a fact. And even when you when you think about the love, the radiating love, particularly like between a man and a woman, or between maybe a man and his mother, or a boy and his mother, or a man and his daughter, that male female dichotomy, and the way that it affects the auric field, which is what Ilana was talking about, and what's something we've been talking about. It does have a physical effect, right? And that's a specific energetic dance and frequency that only comes through the male female dynamic. And that's one of the reasons why this world is so in such chaos right now, because that whole rhythm is broken. It's broken. And the fact that we only talk about the male female dichotomy in terms of relationship, to me, completely underscores that. Most of the men I interact with in my life, I'll never be in a relationship with. So that has to tell us that there has to be a larger, sort of intention that should be had. But let me get back to my subject, because we have a lot of things to talk about, and I have a lot of notes, and I want to make sure that I get to them all. Because, like I said, this conversation is about raising the mysticism vibration. This world bores me. Even looking at the evil shit that these people are doing, and all of the things that they have planned, and just how wicked and insane it is, it's not inspiring. You know what I mean? And the fact that they put it in the movies actually makes it boring, because, yeah, we kind of know what you're going to do. Experiencing it is a different thing, granted, but I'm just saying. The mysticism, the wonderment, the imagination, the love vibration, the driving on the road and not having anywhere to go and anywhere to be, but just going wherever you want to go and doing whatever you want to do. At the beach, hiking in the mountains, sitting quietly with yourself, whatever those flights of fancy, so to speak, the mysticism of it all. That's what I want to inspire. He talked about the Tantra blue field. Obviously, that's another reflection of the masculine and feminine attributes of the physical, because it takes a man and a woman. No disrespect to anybody, anywhere. But in order to manifest the highest, physical, I'm searching for the right word, um, the highest bliss, going back to his word, he used the word bliss, talked about the bliss process. The highest physical experience of bliss, in my opinion, is the union of a man and a woman, though the man and the woman both operating in their masculine and feminine, equally balanced in their masculine and feminine when it comes to the mental, balanced in their masculine and feminine when it comes to the spiritual, balanced in their masculine and feminine when it comes to the physical, and balanced in their masculine and feminine when it comes to the emotional. I think I said them all, but you know what I'm saying. So that's a whole layer and level of like stages of things to go through and sort through and master. So to have the union between those two type of supreme beings, that's the word I have to use. To me, that's when we start talking about tantric blue fields, and there's other contexts of that beyond just the tantra flame, right, or the blue lighting, etc. Because the Egyptians in Kemet, they had the same concept about getting to a certain level of frequency in consciousness where you actually start to radiate or emit a blue field underneath the skin. I don't have my books with me, so I'm a little handicapped in that regard, but I'm sure some of you guys have probably heard of that. The other thing that I wanted to reference, because it is relative, is Merkaba mysticism. And I've actually got several books on this. This is one of the things I wanted to talk about in Quantum Conversations, but I'm just going to use, this in context of what we're talking about. Merkaba is a word that is broken down from 3 words in the ancient Egyptian languages. Mer means light, ka means spirit, and ba means body. It is used to describe a light body spirit that is used for traveling between dimensions. The word refers to the union of the spirit in one's body surrounded by light. Is also a way to connect with light, body, and spirit by using the Merkaba symbol. So one aspect of that, we just talked about the inverted aspect of all of this light-based consciousness and using it for subversive purposes. So obviously that would be the complete opposite of what this is referring to, right? But the righteous, which is what I read, aspect of this is where we're focused. And we're talking about moving in and out of dimensions of consciousness. So if we can see it in the mind, if we can envision it in the mind, if I said, okay, if you're in a position, everybody close your eyes and picture me handing you a red rose. You could visualize that immediately. Somebody might have a park in the background. Somebody might have a regular street in the background. Somebody might have a house in the background. Somebody might not have anything in the background, just the hand and the rose. Somebody might just have the rose, but you went there in your mind. If I thought of any particular movie, like let's say Boomerang with Eddie Murphy, and the scene when Tisha Campbell was outside wilding out, talking about how much of a dog he was when he had the female over there and he was outside telling her to be quiet and pipe down. You could go straight to that scene in your mind and visualize the whole scene, and you're not even there. And it's not even happening right now. That's a dimension of consciousness, and we're doing it all the time. So it's important that we get proper evaluation and perspective on just what's happening here, because the devil is busy, but what are the gods doing? How are we enlightening the planet? How are we maintaining and stabilizing the grid and the frequencies of the planet to stabilize the situation on the ground for the plant life, the animal life, the wildlife, the ocean life, etc.? And they give this concept of Merkaba to early Jewish mysticism, but see, I don't even want to get into that because that's going to take me left. So okay, I'm going to stay on point. I didn't even want to go there. So I want to read, keeping in context with this conversation about the inner being. Reading this passage, well, I was listening to it by audiobook, but I've read it a couple of times since. But let me bring my screen around just to give a little different background. So this passage of the book, I was listening to the audiobook and I've read it again since, where he's talking about the inner being. It really hit home for me because, and I actually have tried the meditation since that he recommends in here, and it really gave me a whole different, I had an experience, and that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing this. So I want to read this particular passage where he's talking about the inner being, and then the video that I said that I uploaded, the portals into the unmanifested, that's this chapter 7. This is part of chapter 6. The question is asked of him, You said that identification with your physical form is part of the illusion. We're on the right page. Yeah. You said that identification with our physical form is part of the illusion. So, how can the body, the physical form, bring you to a realization of being? He says, this is Eckhart Tolle, the body that you can see and touch cannot take you into being, but that visible and tangible body is only an outer shell, or rather a limited and distorted perception of a deeper reality. In your natural state of connectedness with being, this deeper reality can be felt every moment as the invisible inner body, the animating presence within you. So to inhabit the body is to feel the body from within, to feel the life inside the body, and thereby come to know that you are beyond the outer form. That those words in he said the animating presence within you. I thought that was a very, the animating presence is two very, those two words together make a lot of sense to me. And so just meditating on that concept and being mindful of that concept when you're moving out in the world, that there is an animating presence within you that's making the whole show run. You're not really consciously doing it. The animating presence within you is making the whole show run very efficiently. But that is only the beginning of an inward journey that will take you ever more deeply into a realm of great stillness and peace, yet also of great power and vibrant life. At first, you may only get fleeting glimpses of it, but through them, you will begin to realize that you are not just a meaningless fragment in an alien universe, briefly suspended between birth and death, allowed a few short lived pleasures followed by pain and ultimate annihilation. Underneath your outer form, you are connected with something so vast, so immeasurable and sacred that it cannot be conceived or spoken of. Yet I am speaking of it now. I am speaking of it not to give you something to believe in, but to show you how you can know it for yourself. You are cut off from being as long as your mind takes up all your attention. That's critical right there. You are cut off from being as long as your mind takes up all of your attention. When this happens, and it happens continuously for most people, you are not in your body. The mind absorbs all your consciousness and transforms it into mind stuff. You cannot stop thinking. Compulsive thinking has become a collective disease. Your whole sense of who you are is then derived from mind activity. Your identity, as it is no longer rooted in being, becomes a vulnerable and ever needy mental construct, which creates fear as the predominant underlying emotion. I got to read that again. Your identity, as it is no longer rooted in being, becomes a vulnerable and ever needy mental construct, which creates fear as the predominant underlying emotion. Now multiply that times 8 billion. That's me, not Eckhart. The one thing that truly matters is then missing from your life awareness of your deeper self, your invisible and indestructible reality. To become conscious of being, you need to reclaim consciousness from the mind. This is one of the most essential tasks on your spiritual journey. It will free vast amounts of consciousness that previously had been trapped in useless and compulsive thinking. That's a critical statement right there. In Change Your Mind from Lack to Abundance, and the people, those of you guys who have worked with me or talked to me, you know I always talk about energetic leaks, and I talk about the fact that we only have so much energy. You only have so much mind energy. You only have so much spirit energy. You only have so much emotional energy, so much physical energy. So there's only so much to give. And so if you got the things that your mother is constantly stressing you about, and the job that you hate, and the relationship that you know you need to leave, and the bill collectors calling your phone all day, and you checking your social media, to see what so and so said about such and such, and then you also getting triggered from crazy shit happening in the world because you had a crazy upbringing, but then you also eating unhealthy, and then you also watching programming on television that's keeping you locked in a fear-based consciousness, and then you also promiscuous, or you don't have any relationships, and so you feel you hate the world as a result of. I mean, I could go on, but I'm just saying, how could you ever get the download from the creator? How could you ever hear the message in the voice of God with all of that insanity going on? And that's exactly how they want it. To become conscious of being, you need to reclaim consciousness from the mind. I'm reading this again, or I might as well start it. This is one of the most essential tasks on your spiritual journey. It will free vast amounts of consciousness that previously had been trapped in useless and compulsive thinking. A very effective way of doing this is simply to take the focus of your attention away from thinking and directly into the body, where being can be felt in the first instance as the invisible energy field that gives life to what you perceive as the physical body. He has this, I'll read this. Please try it now. You may find it useful to close your eyes for this practice. Later on, when being in the body has become natural and easy, this will no longer be necessary. Direct your attention into the body. Feel it from within. Is it alive? Is there life in your hands, arms, legs, and feet? In your abdomen, your chest? Can you feel the subtle energy field that pervades the entire body and gives vibrant life into every organ and every cell? Can you feel it simultaneously in all parts of the body as a single field of energy? Keep focusing on the feeling of your inner body for a few minutes. Do not start to think about it. Feel it. The more attention you give it, the clearer and stronger this feeling will become. It will feel as if every cell is becoming more alive. And if you have a strong visual sense, you may get an image of your body becoming luminous. Although such an image can help you temporarily pay more attention to the feeling than any image that may arise. An image, no matter how beautiful or powerful, is already defined in form. So there is less scope for penetrating more deeply. It's funny because when I did this, I was listening to him. So I wasn't reading. So I was listening to him, and I sat still and I closed actually I laid down on my yoga mat, and I did this process, and I actually saw a, a luminous inner being within my being. I visualized it. I saw it. That's why ever since I heard that, I've listened to that chapter a couple of times, but I've also been, the truth resonance has been coming to me in multiple different ways in terms of things I've been paying attention to, reading and experiencing, and what's happening in my mind. So I saw the visual of the inner body, the illuminating factor, the animating factor. This is why it's important to take time to sit with yourself, to be still. Sometimes just sitting in a room, a pitch black room, no phones, no candles, no nothing, just complete silence and complete darkness is the best thing you can do, especially if you're stressed or feeling anxiety. Coming back to the center. So that was really powerful. I've just so many things were revealed for me. And again, the whole purpose of having this conversation is we want to we want to be connected to and in alignment with the inner being, which is the connecting factor to the greater consciousness, our protection, source energy, the Elohim, Allah, God, the all in all of that language is appropriate. We're in some very, very tumultuous times, and we need the mark on our doors. The very misinterpreted concept of having the mark on your door so that the soldiers don't come during Easter Passover is a gross misinterpretation. That's really talking about frequency, your state of mind, your consciousness, where you are in your mind and your heart, how you think, how you feel, how you eat, how you live, and how you breathe. That is what determines the mark on your door. And whether you have to engage or dance with Satan, or whether he doesn't see you at all. Merkaba. I'm looking for the blue flame. I'm checking for the blue flame personally, and all of the different renditions of that. So when he was the emphasis for me in all of this is breath, because that inner being feeds, just like she said, those lower vibrational beings feed off of human light. Our inner being feeds from oxygen, from life force energy, from frequencies, from emotions. Experiencing love expands your auric field. That's a fact. And then when we talk about that male-female dichotomy being equally yoked, going back to what we just talked about a few minutes ago, that magnifies that experience. Let me check myself on time. 55, huh? All right, so I didn't want to go over an hour and a half. It's just a lot to say. Context is everything. So when I'm feeling it, I just have to say it. But when I'm not feeling it, I can't force it. So, but the stillness and the quiet is where the downloads from God are coming to me. And so I have to respect that process. That's why spiritual kung fu is resonating for me right now. That's why that language is resonating for me right now, because I am bobbing and weaving, so to speak, spiritually and energetically, and focusing on maintaining my frequency regardless to whom what. And recognizing Agent Smith when he or she or they, aka Satan, present themselves. Indirect messages in the algorithm on social media, on YouTube videos and DMs, directly in terms of people that actually know me, that really, are trying their best to try to sabotage my success, which is inevitable. The social media algorithm working against me, trying to keep the truth and the light of the message I'm trying to get out to the world. So yeah, the kung fu situation has already been taking place in my life for some time now. So why wouldn't we talk about that? Spiritual warfare, I hear everybody talking about that. Not everybody, but I'm just saying it's not a new concept. We're all kind of scratching our heads interested and really starting to get the gist of that. I want to read this passage from the Holographic Universe. I've quoted this in several conversations recently. And the reason that, these particular books and this particular, when I say quantum conversations, I feel like this is quantum because this is really going into the mind science and the spiritual science of how to create, but from the mind's eye. We could say two different parallels would be young boy, this is straight off the top of my head, young brother comes from the inner city gang life environment. He's focused and determined. He works his way through school, gets straight A's, gets a scholarship, goes on to, graduate at the top of his class, ends up getting a, big time job at an investment firm, becomes successfully married and financial, et cetera, and all of those things, wonderful things that he, imagined in his life actually came true because he had a vision, he was determined, he worked hard, et cetera. And then another parallel reality of that could be that same person, instead of going to college, traveled around the world for 4 years and, kind of tapped into the soul of the world to figure out who he or she was, and have a different level of heart-based, spiritual-based experience, and then ending up attracting that same female in another, on another wavelength in her life and in her growth and development, and then ending up, somewhere around the world owning a successful a restaurant or some sort of business where he still ends up having a high level of success, financially, et cetera, but just in a different path, right? Because nobody really has a sole desire to be a venture capitalist or an investor on Wall Street. That's a money thing. But the soul might just be in the direction of financial success, which should be a part of the play here. Why wouldn't it be? It's a game, right? It's a school, right? So those are one of the classes, so to speak, the lessons, the grades. So this passage in the holographic universe is talking about reincarnation. I don't use the word reincarnation because, yes, I do believe in incarnation, but reincarnation to me gives the impression that ZaZaAli will be back again in another lifetime. And incarnation that's not the equate, that's not the context. It's that my soul, which is endless and boundless, it's the part of me, the individual soul of the collective soul of God. That would be my, and then God comes and has an individualized experience as me and my unique soul and my unique signature imprint. And then my unique soul and signature imprint after this lifetime goes back and reconnects with the mother plane, so to speak. But so he's going into reincarnation. I'm going to use his word. And the reason that I'm sharing this, because again, we're talking about dimensions of consciousness. We're talking about the mysticism of life. We're talking about stepping out of the fear-based frequency and into the mind of God, tapping into the love and the heart-based consciousness, which is what all of this is about. It's what this whole game is about. We're talking about thinking about things outside of the insanity and chaos happening in the world, raising our level of thought, raising our level of awareness, raising our intentions in how we're moving in the world. So that's why we're talking about it. Because to me, it's fascinating to think that I've been here, I've been doing this dance for multiple lifetimes, and I came to play a big role this time. I can't front. I think about it all the time. My soul has some big kahunas, I must say, because I did not come to play small in this lifetime. But I want to read this because, again, it takes us into, I feel like this gives us a glimpse into the mind of God and a glimpse into the limitless portals of existence and potentials that we have. So I'm going to start off in the middle of this. This chapter has already started for context, but he's talking about this guy, Witten, Joel Witten, who was a professor of psychiatry at the University of Toronto Medical School, who used hypnosis to study what people unconsciously know about themselves. So he was, this is a continuity of work. This wasn't just some like 1 or 2 year experiment. This was a long continuity of work. So I'm going to fast forward into the dialogue about this particular subject. To conduct his research, Witten gathered together a core group of roughly 30 people. These included individuals from all walks of life, from truck drivers to computer scientists, some of whom believed in reincarnation and some of whom did not. He then hypnotized them individually and spent literally thousands of hours recording everything that they had to say about their alleged previous existences. Even in its broad strokes, the information was fascinating. One striking aspect was the degree of agreement between the subjects' experiences. All reported numerous past lives, some as many as 20 to 25. Although a practical limit was reached when Witten regressed them to what he calls their caveman existences, when one lifetime became indistinguishable from the next. All reported that gender was not specific to the soul, and many had lived at least one life as the opposite sex. All reported that the purpose of life was to evolve and learn, and that multiple existences facilitated this process. Witten also found evidence that strongly suggested the experiences were actual past lives. One unusual feature was the ability the memories had to explain a wide range of seemingly unrelated events and experiences in the subject's current lives. For example, one man, a psychologist born and raised in Canada, had possessed an inexplicable British accent as a child. He also had an irrational fear of breaking his leg, a phobia of air travel, a terrible nail biting problem, an obsessive fascination with torture, and as a teenager had had a brief and enigmatic vision of being in a room with a Nazi officer shortly after operating the pedals of a car during a driving test. Under hypnosis, the man recalled being a British pilot during World War II. While on a mission over Germany, his plane was hit by a shower of bullets, one of which penetrated the fuselage and broke his leg. This in turn caused him to lose control of the plane's foot pedals, forcing him to crash land. He was subsequently captured by the Nazis, tortured for information by having his nails pulled out, and died a short time later. Many of the subjects also experienced profound psychological and physical healings as a result of the traumatic past life memories they unearthed, and gave uncannily accurate historical details about the times in which they had lived. Some even spoke languages unknown to them. While reliving an apparent past life as a Viking, one man, a 37-year-old behavioral scientist, shouted words that linguistic authorities later identified as Old Norse. After being regressed to an ancient Persian lifetime, the man began to write in a spidery Arabic style that an expert in Near Eastern languages identified as an authentic representation of Sanahid Pahlavi, a long extinct Mesopotamian tongue that flourished between 226 and 651. Now, I'm going to keep reading this, but I want to bring us back to the concept of the inner being, of the animating essence, the animating energy within us, the life force energy, that thing that's working and that's moving us and that's propelling us, that is way beyond us and way bigger than us. So the concept of these different lifetimes, that same inner being is going in all of those different bodies, all of those different sleeves, all of those different families, all of those different races, cultures, nationalities, etc. God coming and having this unique, individualized experience as you, perhaps. I have to say that now because, there's a lot of other things on the table. I don't know if all of the people among us are human beings. I know I keep saying that, but I have to say it. So, the caveat just for the sake of clarity. And I'm really emphasizing those things to keep us like brain exercises. Walks off but carry a big stick type vibes, but intellectually, spiritually and emotionally. Like, yes, it's a vibe. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about spirituality and metaphysics, but we know Satan is lurking. This is what it is. But we're ready for that too, So this concept of the soul, the spirit. I wrote this, I'm looking at my notes trying to find. I have to use multiple pens, otherwise I won't be able to read anything. Because I start out like, okay, I'm just gonna make a list of things I want to talk about. And then I'm gonna screenshot this one day and put it on the page just so you guys can see. I have 5 color pens: green, red, blue, purple, and black. So I can keep one page so I don't have to turn through the pages, but it's a whole lot going on. So that each color signifies anyway, that's neither here nor there. The soul, the inner being, the spirit, these dimensions of consciousness, the concept of heaven and hell is what we're talking about. And so this is all to bring context in terms of the significance of this time, the significance of our lives in this time, but also the significance of everything beyond this time. Third dimensional reality, earth, physical, space, human being, twilight zone, circus, all the silly shit going on our planet. And there's a lot of really silly shit going on our planet. So this is about tapping into the cosmic mindfulness, because I can't play in Satan's frequency. I can't even fake, well, I can't play in the ignorance frequency. It's very difficult for me. So let me come back to the book. Okay. See, I just got sidetracked. But Witten's most remarkable discovery came when he regressed subjects to the interim. Okay, this is critical. So this is why I stopped. I meant to set this up right. Many Lives, Many Masters. I believe I've read in some of our videos before where we talked about this, where Brian Weiss had the same experience as a hypnotic regression. There's a title for them. It escapes me, but he wrote the same book and was having the same experience. And it was saying that as these people came in and out of consciousness, that he was communicating with a higher state of consciousness, right? So, but Witten's most remarkable discovery came when he regressed subjects to the interim between lives, a dazzling light-filled realm in which there was, quote, no such thing as time or space as we know it. According to his subjects, part of the purpose of this realm was to allow them to plan their next life, to literally sketch out the important events and circumstances that would befall them in the future. But this process was not simply some fairy tale exercise in wish fulfillment. Witten found that when individuals were in the between life realm, they entered an unusual state of consciousness in which they were acutely self aware and had a heightened moral and ethical sense. In addition, they no longer possessed the ability to rationalize away any of their faults and misdeeds and saw themselves with total honesty. To distinguish it from our normal everyday consciousness, Witten calls this intensely conscientious state of mind meta consciousness. Pause. This level of clarity and wisdom from the, I don't even know, I was going to say the void, but it's not the void. The wisdom from the source, how crystal clear that the language and the messaging in that passage, and that goes to the same thing with what I read about from the Brian Weiss book, as well as the concept of Merkaba, as well as the concept of Christ consciousness, as well as the concept of immortality in the Tao. This is that ladder again. How far do you want to go up? Because you can stop at any point. Mediocre is like 5 or 6 rings up. It's where 90% of the world is. So you can stop at any point and wouldn't be no rights or wrong. None will be the wiser, no judgment. It is what it is. God is still experiencing it all. Move forward. How high do you want to climb? Thus, when subjects planned their next life, they did so with a sense of moral obligation. They would choose to be reborn with people whom they had wronged in a previous life, so they would have the opportunity to make amends for their actions. They planned pleasant encounters with soulmates, individuals with whom they had built a loving and mutually beneficial relationship over many lifetimes, and they scheduled accidental events to fulfill still other lessons and purposes. One man said that as he planned his next life, he visualized, quote, a sort of clockwork instrument into which you could insert certain parts in order for specific consequences to follow. That sounds like spiritually crisp scientific language. Those consequences were not always pleasant. After being regressed to a conscious state, a woman who had been raped when she was 37 revealed that she had actually planned the event before she had come into this incarnation. As she explained, it had been necessary for her to experience a tragedy at that age in order to in order to force her to charge her, excuse me, I'm going to read that again. As she explained, it had been necessary for her to experience a tragedy at that age in order to force her to change her, quote, entire soul complexion and thus break through to a deeper and more positive understanding of the meaning of life. Again, entire soul complexion, change your entire soul complexion. That sounds like spiritually crisp scientific language. I'm saying that because I love words. I don't think I love words. I love the energy that words can convey. I love how words can make people feel. I love how words can produce thought, tap into consciousness, raise people up, and tear people down. I don't love that aspect of it, but I respect the power. I've been so brutally I've been so abused by words in the social media realm for a very consistent amount of time. So I respect the power. Another subject, a man afflicted with a serious and life-threatening kidney disease, disclosed that he had chosen the illness to punish himself for a past life transgression. However, he also revealed that dying from the kidney disease was not part of his script. And before he came into this life, he had also arranged to encounter someone or something that would help him remember this fact and hence enable him to heal both his guilt and his body. True to his word, after he started his sessions with Witten, he experienced a near miraculous complete recovery. Not all of Witten's subjects were so eager to learn about the future their metaconscious selves had laid out for them. Several censored their own memories and asked Witten to please give them post hypnotic instructions not to remember anything that they had said during trance. As they explained, they did not want to be tempted to tamper with the script their metaconscious selves had written for them. This is an astounding idea. Is it possible that our unconscious mind is only aware of the rough outline of our destiny, but actually steers us towards its fulfillment? Witten's research is not the only evidence that this may be the case. In a statistical study of 28 serious U.S. railroad accidents, parapsychologist William Cox found that significantly fewer people took trains on accident days than on the same day in previous weeks. And I had to read that a few times to properly understand that. My interpretation, just in case it went over your head, was that on days when there were train accidents, people's destiny kept them from missing those trains, which is dope. Cox's findings suggest that we all may be constantly unconsciously precognizing the future and making decisions based on that information, Some of us opting to avoid mishap, and perhaps some, like the woman who chose to experience a personal tragedy and the man who elected to endure kidney disease, choosing to experience negative situations to fulfill other unconscious designs and purposes. Carefully or haphazardly, we choose our earthly circumstances, says Witten. The message of metaconsciousness is that the life situation of every human being is neither random or inappropriate. Seen objectively from the interlife, every human experience is simply another lesson in the cosmic classroom. We're in Harvard, Yale. I shouldn't use them as an example. I only use them because this is what the world sees as the pinnacle of education. I'm just saying that in terms of like the level of the magnitude of the lesson that we're all experiencing right now. It is important to note that the existence of such unconscious agendas does not mean that our lives are rigidly predestined and all fates unavoidable. The fact that many of Witten's subjects asked not to remember what they said under hypnosis implies again that the future is roughly outlined and still subject to change. Doesn't that make things feel a little bit lighter? Does for me. Coming back to my notes, making sure I say everything I wanted to say, because this is a quantum conversation and I was feeling a certain vibration and frequency that I wanted to share with you guys. Oh, so with all of that in context, right? One of the questions that I asked myself during this past 2 weeks in a meditation, because I told you guys my ability to communicate was stifled as I was processing. And I was laying down to meditate after yoga. And I was trying to quiet my mind, but before I wanted to quiet my mind, because quieting your mind is damn near impossible. You got to go about it in a different way. I was thinking about cleaning my mind and just analyzing and assessing the thoughts that were coming up. And the thoughts that were coming up were pleasing to my spirit. And I knew that it was going to get in the way of the experience I wanted to have in meditation. So I asked myself, how do I want to think about this? The thing that was nagging at my spirit, the things that were nagging at my spirit. How do I want to think about this? That's a powerful ass question. Especially because we know we're always talking to ourselves. You're always, always, always talking to yourself. How do I want to think about this job? How do I want to think about this man? How do I want to think about these people I have to interact with on a daily basis? How do I want to think about this government? How do I want to think about this planet? How do I want to think about this invisible energy field that we've been talking about now for a little bit more than an hour? And we started out talking about the blue flame and climbing the ladder of consciousness. And then we talked about the inner body, the animated essence in our bodies. Then we talked about the concept of incarnation and that we've been here multiple lifetimes, having many different varieties of experiences. And that inner being, that inner being is sort of hopping in and hopping out of this suit and that state of awareness and that state of consciousness. And that there is a very crisp and concise and organized and powerful spiritual, scientific energy. That's my language. The crisp, clear, scientific, spiritual language. That's why I like words, because I pride myself on the fact that I know that God has blessed me with the ability to use words in a lot of different capacities. How do I want to think about this? How do you want to think about the end of 2023? You want to think about the economic chaos and the artificial intelligence and all of this insanity happening in the world? I don't think not thinking about it would be wise. Not considering, I don't think those things would be wise. But can we start to pivot and contextualize this and give some thought to the question? I ain't even trying to draw a long line in the sand. I'm just trying to plant a seed. How do I want to think about this? When you wake up in the morning, whatever it is that's on your heart, how do I want to think about this? That question gave me a lot of clarity in that moment. Because when I asked myself my question, oh, I know this is definitely not it. Ding, ding, ding. I have the answer really quickly. How do I want to think about Hawaii? That was my meditation. I'm still working on that. And when I, energy in terms of questioning why are the gods allowing this? Why are our ancestors allowing this? You know, I be fired up when I'm talking, but I've been in meditation about this for 3 weeks now. You know what I'm saying? So the quietness and the stillness and the surrender aspect, all of the feminine attributes that are necessary to navigate these times have been in full effect. So sometimes when I'm talking and, I get fired up and the spirit is flowing through me, it may come across a certain type of way. That's that masculine energy. That's that warrior energy that is so necessary for this time, that I'm so grateful to the creator that I have. Let me just say that. But sometimes you guys only see that side, and then but there's a whole. So this is the balance too. This whole conversation is to balance out the headline news segments. It's to balance out all of the chaos you see in online. And I'm probably just we're probably not going to do headline news this week because of how much I put into last week's edition. I do have some more content to upload. So, and hopefully I'll get some questions for Ask Me Anything tomorrow, and then we'll have that. But I'm gonna take Sunday for headline news off because I need to distribute my energy. Really need to take a day off, but that's besides the point. But one of the other things that what's his name? Dan Winter. His name was not Dan Winter. What was his name? That's crazy. Dan Winter was his name, right? I closed the page out. I can't even go back. Oh no, I didn't. I'm tripping. Okay, let's see. Dan Winter, exactly. You know why I got confused? Because Whitney. I read Whitney for 30 times in that book and threw me off. So Dan Winter, one of the things he said was ideas are living entities. An idea is a living entity. When's the last time you had a good idea? When's the last time a light went off in your head? And your whole spirit said, yes, that's it. That's the direction. Let's do it. Let's go. What do we have to do? How do we have to get there? When's the last time you had a good idea? When's the last time you had a great idea? Ancient people is one of the greatest ideas I have ever had. And it's all in divine timing. It's one of my most beautiful creations. I cannot wait to get it in my hands and give it to the world. It's one of my greatest, most brilliant ideas. I know I'm in alignment somewhere. Something is going right, and my spirit and my inner being is directionally guiding me to something amazing for me to have produced what I'm getting ready to give to the world. And for me to have the pleasure and privilege to have you beautiful people with me in this audience, invested in what I do, invested in creating a collective consciousness, invested in being informed, invested in caring, invested in climbing the ladder. That's how I know if you my people, if you invested in climbing the ladder. That's what my life been about since day one. Since I was a child, I was invested in climbing the ladder. I had a lot of mental fortitude since I can remember. My mind was strong and determined as a young child. Ideas are living entities. We waiting on God and God is waiting on us. Going back to the UFO conversation, the black gods, why is God allowing this, the ancestors, etc. We have to elevate, we have to climb the ladder. We have to prepare ourselves in our energetic resonance. How strong is your signal? That's how you know if the mark is on your door. What are you radiating? I don't know. Well, what are you attracting? That same inner body is the same. I liken the resonance to the to the the invisible energy field that keeps the universe in structure, and the sun rotating and the moon doing what it does and the stars and the whole universe. If you've ever been to Sedona or to a place where there's, in a desert area where there's no light traffic, and you can just see the stars and see the sky, and they're not spraying, which is rare these days. But when I was in Sedona back in 2000 and oh, I think it was 2018. Yeah, 2018. And I was outside one night, and it was a crystal clear night. And I swear to you, there was like a billion. This image on the screen, it legit. I mean, without the, this, I think this is definitely doctored up a little bit, the extra purple and all that around it. But just the number of stars was absolutely mind blowing. It was mind blowing. I felt so small, but so big at the same time. Small because all the shit that I was stressing about and worried about really didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. And big because I'm connected to all of that. I'm empowered by all of that. I'm protected by all of that. And it's endless and limitless and expansive. And I'm all of those things too. And so are you. They say that this number is changing. I've been quoting this for some time now, and every time I go back and check it, it's changing. But they say, according to the scientists of this world, our galaxy, the Milky Way, is just one among these numerous galaxies, and it isn't even considered a big galaxy. It stretches for 105,700 light years in diameter and may contain at least 100 billion planets and 400 million stars. Now, if we're to imagine how many planets and stars those 2 trillion galaxies might have, we will probably have to throw out our calculators. This is especially true since some galaxies are several times larger than our Milky Way. Preceding in the article, it says, I read that out of order, but currently the observable universe, which has a radius of 46.5 billion light years, seems to contain at least 2 trillion galaxies. Now, this twofold. Do I think it's, as vast and mind-blowing as we could possibly conceive or not conceive? Absolutely. This is also, it's like if you can measure it, you can control it. You know what I'm saying? So like them pretending like they have the instruments and the utilities to actually say how many galaxies there are in our world is ludicrous, and it's laughable, especially because we know that they're not climbing the ladder. They're going in the other direction and trying to invert all of this technology. They're at war with what we're talking about. Nature, which the universe is. We got so caught up in this flat earth conversation, and whether the earth is flat or round, whether there's a dome or all of this shit, like it's all Mother Nature. It's all connected to us. It's all real. It's all living. It's all organic. It's all planned in the divine mind. None of it's useless. It's all operating at its highest capacity. We are not, while we online trying to argue with each other about shit that don't really matter. I don't care if it's flat or round. If it's flat, can that help us stop chemtrails? That's the conversation I want to have. Is that a clue to how to stop HAARP? When you got that revelation, did you get the revelation of how to stop the science of genetically modified food? I'm being facetious, guys. I'm off topic, but I'm just saying, anytime I start talking about the galaxies now, because that's like a whole cultish personality, sentiment, Anytime I say anything about the universe, kind of like I have to put that footnote in. Let me come back to my notes. So this is about a clear and concise spiritual conversation. Crisp, clear, concise spiritual conversation. Let me check my time. Okay, I'm at an hour and 34 minutes. So that's good. I'm right at the time that I wanted to end. I'm just going to go back and revisit my notes and make sure that I said everything that I wanted to say. Oh, in terms of how they were talking about the sexual part of the astral body and how, tying that into the whole MK Ultra, um, sort of breaking a person's personality and why that's so intrinsic. Um, and I love Ilana Freeland. She said the astral body has the juice. The juice for what? For whatever you want. I wrote down Sodom and Gomorrah because, and I'm in a world right now that is very explicitly, overtly sexual, very LGBTQ dominant, etc. I know how to go. I know how to blend in. I know how to become a part of the painting, but at the same time, I'll have a brush and be painting my own. I always march into the tune of my own drum. But I'm just saying, this is why the universe brought me to right where I am. I needed to see this Sodom and Gomorrah in the flesh. So what is the electromagnetic or the auric field of a overtly promiscuous being that is out here wilding out and having unprotected sex, especially with people who have taken the Jim Jones juice and et cetera, et cetera? What does that auric field look like? What does that energy look like? Feel like? What is that inner body? Is it connected on the inside? Is it hollow? Is it heavy and dense? Which usually ends up reflecting a heavy and dense, overweight, obese body. We are vast, complicated, multi-layered, multi-dimensional beings. We need to start acting like it. We are vast, complicated, multi-layered, multi-dimensional beings. We need to start acting like it. And from all of these different complexities that we just talked about, the emphasis is that we are not alone. We are never alone. We have never been alone. I don't even think the concept of being alone for an inner body, a, a movement of consciousness and energy without the physical form, but directed and intentional. The concept of that or it being alone just can't even compute because it's a part of the whole. The physical body makes it feel like and look like we're not a part of the whole. Nothing could be further than the truth, from the truth, especially those of us that are tapping into that Christ consciousness, that Merkaba, climbing the ladder, climbing towards one another. But where one cannot find like-minded individuals, one should be found alone. We don't need to be out here picking up no wooden nickels. We're going to have to learn how to really be in the world and operate in the world with our loved ones or without them. And when I say without them, that's not, that can mean a thousand different things. That can just mean energetically cutting people off, but still, picking them up and taking them to the grocery store, whatever. That's what the visual in my mind was. I literally just visualized somebody picking their auntie up from dialysis. That was the first thought. I don't know why. My brain is crazy. Anyway, I'm just making sure I said everything I wanted to say. because this has been a beautiful conversation, and we are stoking the flames of the mysticism, and we're sparking the ingenuity and enthusiasm and inspiration and imagination frequencies, because that's where God is. We can prove it too. What we just talked about proved it, but we can prove it mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I'm just saying, it's just, the mysticism, the wonderment, the clarity, the peace of mind. That's where God is. And I'm going to leave you, beautiful beings, with that kung fu, spiritual kung fu, the revelations, the written articles that I've written. I don't know if I said this in the beginning. I'm going to put them on PDFs and post them all in the tab. I'll notify you guys when I do it, because I know the previous ones I only posted them on the membership cipher, so they're not actually in your library. So I'm going to save those as PDF articles. I've already written part 1 and part 2, spiritual kung fu, and I'm going to post part 3, which is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be life force energy, but it's going to be in that direction. I'm going to post all of those articles so that we have a specific tab for the writings, the spiritual kung fu revelations. That's what I've called it. All right. Thank you guys so much for your time and attention. Let me know your feedback. As always, I hope you have a great weekend. Ask me anything tomorrow. If you have questions and you'd like me to address them, hit me up. All right. Peace and love.